Let's turn now to someone who herself resigned, not just from cabinet, but also from caucus. Sheila Copps is a former Liberal cabinet minister under Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, and Sheila Copps joins me now live. So I know that you've been following, thank you very much for taking the time, Sheila Copps, and I know that you've been following all this and you have some very strong ideas on what should happen to these two cabinet ministers. So share them with us.
Well, you mentioned I resigned from caucus. I resigned my seat. I never resigned from caucus. And I think the challenge that I put out in the column that I write for the Hill Times is I don't understand why, and I believe Dr. Philpott is deeply troubled by what she thinks was something wrong. If she has so little confidence in the Prime Minister, why does she remain a Liberal? It makes absolutely no sense. And the same thing for the former Attorney General, who basically went before a Justice Committee and said that she accused the Prime Minister of getting very close to crossing the line. She refused to listen to 11 interventions from colleagues who said, look, there's another way to tackle this problem. You might want to open your mind to it. She's very vehement that she won't open her mind to any suggestions, but she still wants to sit in a group that also is about listening to others and not just moving ahead on what you think.
But don't you think it's fair to say that you can believe in the party, you can believe in the Liberal Party and its platform and many of its ideas, and not believe in the way the Prime Minister has handled a situation?
You can't stay in a caucus if you don't believe in the Prime Minister. I think it makes no sense. And in fact, Jane Philpott almost put out a challenge to other colleagues in cabinet to join her, claiming that, you know, her principles were stronger than her allegiance to being in a cabinet. Well, the same thing holds true of the members of the caucus. The caucus now, I'm sure, is struggling because two very senior and respected people have left. Neither of them has really explained properly why, because if you look at the statements that were made by Jody Wilson-Raybould, she actually told the Justice Committee that she had made up her mind on the SNC-Lavalin issue before she took a meeting with the Prime Minister. So she was doing it single-handedly, even though she had colleague after colleague after colleague telling her that, look, if there's a way to fix this problem legally and save the potential damage to 9,000 families across the country, please look at it. And she categorically refused. So if she feels so strongly about it, the logical next step is for her to step out of the Liberal caucus and not to run as a Liberal, because the leader who's leading the team has lost her confidence, and ditto for Madam Philpott. And if she does have that much integrity, I think she should just step out completely.
I still don't understand why you believe that you need to support the leader of the party at all costs, no matter what, even if you feel as though they've handled a situation, a very important situation that is putting the government potentially in crisis. Why you have to just support that leader no matter what, and you can't still hold true to the principles of why some people may have voted for you, whether it's on Indigenous issues or whether it's on, you know, legalization of marijuana, other issues that both Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott worked on.
The leader did not put the caucus in crisis. Jody Wilson-Raybould did. She started the crisis. Jane Philpott was at her house fielding phone calls from the media the night that she decided to resign a couple of weeks ago. And we get this sort of dribble of challenges. She goes to cabinet. She's upset she has to wait for a couple of hours before she's let in. It's a dribble, death by dribble, which has been launched by two colleagues, or a colleague who now has somebody else joining her, who want to remain in the caucus, but have stated publicly they have no confidence in the leader. It boggles
But they have
the mind
no confidence. But Jody Wilson-Raybould says that, you know, she didn't have confidence because she felt as though she was inappropriately pressured as Attorney General, that she wasn't going to politically interfere in a case where, you know, the top prosecutor had made a decision.
That's completely false, because she had an obligation, and in fact it was in the legislation. There was a split decision that came from the chief prosecutor. She was asked by one of her colleagues to look at other options, refused. Jody Wilson-Raybould didn't even hear her colleagues out. She said quite clearly in the Justice Committee that she made her decision before she took a meeting with the Prime Minister. And the bottom line is, when you're in the position of having a deferred prosecution agreement, there are individuals who did something horribly wrong a decade ago They have already changed their whole management structure. They've put in place a series of steps, and they've admitted their guilt. So they have been seeking a deferred prosecution agreement, which is the same type of agreement that could happen in any courtroom at any time. And if Miss Jody Wilson-Raybould was so concerned about the legality of it, she should have spoken to the Prime Minister, and she did not.
I mean, she ended up speaking to the Prime Minister, and she said, look, I've made my decision based on the conversations that I have had. And I hope that you are not, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but I hope that you are not pressuring me or you are not telling me to interfere in this case. Because she felt as though that would be inappropriate in her role as Attorney General.
She took 11 meetings, and honestly, I think about the copyright legislation. We had 89 lobbyists attached to that piece of legislation. I took probably 150 meetings on it. She took 11 meetings and felt that she was receiving pressure. Now, when you are the Attorney General and you have the legal right to recommend a deferred prosecution agreement, before you decide, no, I'm not going to do this, it might be nice to talk to some of your colleagues, including your boss, the Prime Minister. And when she went to the Justice Committee, she said very directly, I made my decision before I took the meeting with the Prime Minister. So she was acting on a unilateral fashion, and maybe that, and the other element that I think is kind of missing in the discussion, you have two individuals who've been highly successful in their private lives, who've never sat in an opposition bench or done any of the heavy lifting in politics other than becoming a minister. And sometimes when you are a minister, the heat gets pretty hot and you got to hang together. And if you don't hang together, you're going to hang separately. And right now, the two people who have resigned from the cabinet are setting the stage to hang the Liberal government.
So
I'm not sure why they would want to stay in the caucus.
Mm-hmm. And I think you tweeted or you sent out, Trudeau needs to lance the boil inside the caucus. Tell us what you mean by that. This is a tweet from you.
When you're in the caucus, it's a place where you should feel free to speak openly without having those conversations reported on subsequently. I just got an email this morning from a very close friend whose husband was the very well-respected leader of the government in the House, Herb Gray. And she said, and I agree, she was absolutely shocked to see the copious notes taken by Jody Wilson-Raybould when she recounted all the conversations that she had in what is supposed to be a kind of a cabinet confidential conversation system. If she's taking those notes and if she's getting her book deal ready, which I think somebody referred to this morning on an earlier show, if she's doing that, how can a caucus member feel free to speak in caucus with impunity when they know that she's probably going to be making notes of everything they say and then going out and speaking to the media about it?
So you think that the Prime Minister should kick them out of caucus?
Yes, I do. I think they also, not only does the Prime Minister need to take strong action, they also need to reflect on, and I believe Jane Philpott believed everything she wrote in that letter, and she spoke about the greater challenge. And Jody Wilson-Raybould spoke about speaking truth to power. Can they really answer the question? Why would you remain in a caucus where you've gone out and told the country you don't have faith in your leader?
Because they believe in the party, they believe in the platform, they believe in a whole bunch of other ways in which they're liberals.
They're in the party. I'm not suggesting they be kicked out of the party, but in a caucus, when you're elected to put a platform before the people and to go on television and defend things, there's a lot of water you put in your wine. And these two women who have very strong
inappropriate, perhaps illegal interference in a criminal prosecution. I mean, that might be too much water for some people.
Jody Wilson-Raybould said it was not illegal. So,
others have suggested it could be. It could have been.
I mean, that's the whole discussion point here. The point is, if you are going to be reflecting on a matter that affects the lives of 9,000 people, you receive a recommendation. It wasn't a decisive recommendation. It was a recommendation. She receives the recommendation. In less than a week, before she takes her meeting with the Prime Minister, she makes a decision without consulting other colleagues. When she was asked in the Justice Committee, whom did you consult? She had no answer. So there is a duty on the prosecutor to also get as much information as possible and to hear all sides of the story. And she obviously felt she was not prepared to listen to anyone other than the recommendations, which was not a unanimous recommendation that she received. And if you remember in the Justice Committee, when she was asked about the split decision, she got very bristly and said, well, how do you know about the split decision? So she was more concerned about the leak in her office than she was about the fact that she had been told internally, been given advice that she could have gone to an outside legal person, as she did after she left the caucus, to see if the suggestion of a deferred prosecution agreement held legal muster, and she refused to do so. So this is a crisis that she has created, and I'm not sure why we should all be looking at the Prime Minister and saying, well, please keep her in the caucus because she's such a great member. She's basically set out to, apparently, according to her own father, in a statement that he made 2 weeks ago, the possibility of taking the government down.
Sheila Copps, you sound angry about this. You know, there are a lot of people that listened to Jody Wilson-Raybould and believed her, thought that she was a very credible witness, but you sound furious.
She believes it herself. I'm thankful that I'm no longer in the game, but I'm furious for my colleagues. And, you know, the whole business about two strong women going, well, there are a heck of a lot of other strong women who are still hanging in there. And how do you think they will feel when they're sitting in cabinet and if somebody sends a letter saying, well, anybody else who has integrity, quit with me? And Andrew Scheer gets to jump in and say, oh, follow Jane Philpott's request to quit with me. And they're all supposed to be sitting there hanging together. Of course I'm furious. I don't understand the rationale of what they're attempting to do. This is the most progressive Indigenous government that we've ever had, and they're setting the stage to take it down. It makes no sense politically. Maybe they have other agenda items. I don't know, and I do believe they believe what they're saying. I just think it's an anathema to politics. And if you've been in the caucus and in the cabinet, you need to have a leader and you need to have a team that's willing to rally around when times get tough. And when the kitchen gets a little hot, if you can't take it, then you get out of the kitchen.
How much of a crisis is this for the Trudeau government?
It's a huge crisis. I'm getting all kinds of emails and tweets from friends who've served in cabinet, and some for many years, and other friends who kind of say, well, like, what's the end game here? If Jody Wilson-Raybould is concerned about the Indigenous agenda, does she think Andrew Scheer is going to give her an Indigenous agenda? It doesn't make sense.
Sheila Copps, appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you so much. Bye now.
Former Liberal Cabinet Minister Sheila Copps.